Warning: the following content is intended for mature audiences. Subjects such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, and suicide will occur and may disturb some viewers. The views and opinions in this video are not those of YouTube, its content creators, or affiliates. Viewer discretion is advised. And welcome back. So, I'm going to be keeping with the speech that I made in this one, and the next subject I wanted to talk about is who can get PTSD, who can be affected by it. You know, I've covered it a little bit, but I wanted to illustrate some of the points because I think it was 2012 or 2013 maybe that the medical community at large pretty much put out this press packet that said, oh, anybody can get PTSD. You know, it doesn't have to be just military. And when they did that, it was very comforting to me to know that there were actual strides being made to recognize the fact that anybody can have it. You know, like I've been saying, it's a disease of the mind for human beings. And we're all human beings. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, where you're from. Pain is pain. But one thing that I found out, because I looked up some numbers about how many people are in the military, how many people are veterans of the military, how many people are, you know, police officers and firefighters and things like that. And I saw that they have an estimated affliction rate of like 40 to 60%, which is a ridiculously high number. It's, to be honest, is an offensive number that they are that at risk of it. You know, 40 to 60% of anybody being affected by it is, that's a huge percentage. And unfortunately, it is part of the territory because they're the ones that are putting their lives on the line. They're the ones that are risking all for some. You know, like they say, some gave all gave some. You know, that's unfortunately the nature of being the ones that are willing to put yourselves on the line. And you know, there's a lot of people that are thankful that you guys do what you do, and I'm one of them. But then I saw that, not including, you know, military personnel, police officers, or, you know, little kids, that the civilians of the United States have a 20% estimation as being affected by PTSD. So it's a lot lower of a percentage rate. But then I looked up how many people are in the United States alone. Just the United States current population is around 325 million. So when you take out how many people are underage, how many people are, you know, in the military or police officers or anything like that, you're still dealing with a base number of about 300 million people. And I don't know the exact numbers. It could be more, it could be less. But that's still 50 to 60 million people in the United States. Million with an M. 50 to 60 million people in the United States that have PTSD. That's a big frickin' number. And like I said before, you know, it's a situation in your life that makes you feel completely alone, even when you've got friends and family around you. We've got 50 million people, 60 million people in this nation that have PTSD. Proof right there, we aren't alone. We'll never be alone. And, you know, I want to see that people are getting more comfortable with themselves and what they have to deal with, because there's varying degrees of PTSD. There's varying ways of getting it. Like I said, I watched my fiance pass away. There's military members that have seen their friends find an IED and not be able to come back to base from it. There's police officers that have been pulling, double duty, and they end up responding to a call that ends up with them seeing a gang shootout or a domestic disturbance, and it affects them. It's just that little straw that broke the camel's back. And there's so many ways that you can actually get it. And one of my friends, her dad was in the military, and he wasn't even in front lines. He was on base. I think she said he was in communications or something like that. So he never had to go to the front lines. But he still got it because of all the stuff he saw when the guys were coming back from the front lines. And that was before she was even born. When she was born, his PTSD had gotten so bad that her parents weren't even sleeping in the same bedroom when she was born. And, that's something that, even though she didn't really answer the question, she kind of avoided it, but she, as far as I could get out of her, never went through anything seriously traumatic. But because she grew up with her dad having PTSD and her parents staying in separate rooms and interacting with each other in such a way that it was very disquieting, she ended up getting affected by that. Maybe she doesn't have PTSD, but it can still affect her. So while she may not have PTSD or anything like that, she definitely has, some amount of depression on certain subjects. She has certain amount of, unease with certain subjects. And it's because of being around people that have PTSD. Her father having, all that stuff that he's dealing with. And that goes to show it's not just the people that have PTSD that are affected by it. There's so many ways you can get it, and that's one of the potential ways of getting it. It's not just watching someone pass away or watching some horrible thing happen. It's a ripple effect. It's, dropping a pond or dropping a rock into a pond and watching the ripples reach the shoreline, and it affects the shore. It can affect anybody in any way for any reason, and that's what we have to start acknowledging as well. We have to acknowledge that anybody can get it, any way, in any way, shape, or form, whether it's through just being an empathetic person and going through something really bad. It's not clear cut, black and white. This is how you're going to get it. 7.5 billion people, there's 7.5 billion ways to get it. But, it comes back to, how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to see PTSD? Are you going to see it as something that you need, only this treatment for, or are you going to see it as something that maybe there's another way that works specifically for you, custom tailored to you? Why not? PTSD is custom tailored pain by you for you. Custom tailor something that makes you happy by you for you. It's just how it is. Because anybody's at risk. Anybody can get it. Whether your father has it and you end up having to grow up seeing it affect them and dealing with it when you're that young, or being someone who's over the age of 18 and going through something serious. It's going to affect everybody, not just the people that are affected by it directly. It's an area of effect attack. It really is. But another thing that I wanted to talk about with this is that there are a lot of professionals that are dealing with this and trying to help people as best they can. And, you know, a little while ago, the VA got in some hot water because, and they said, I'm quoting the VA on this, they dropped the ball with helping veterans that have PTSD. I'm surprised they didn't admit to that earlier, not because they're faulty or anything, but because they have X amount of professionally, medically trained people dealing with a whole lot more people that have PTSD. You know, if you've got 2 psychiatrists and 2 psychologists at each VA hospital, but you've got 50,000 veterans that are going to each hospital that have, well, okay, maybe not 50,000, like 5,000 veterans that are going to each hospital that have PTSD. 4 people for 5,000? That's a lot of outnumbering going on there. And there's no real way to make it easier on them. And granted, they're the ones that signed up to help people with PTSD. You know, they know the numbers, but don't blame them, because they're doing the best they can with who they've got. There's not enough psychiatrists in the world. And I'm not making that up. I'm not overemphasizing anything. If you look up how many people there are that have PTSD, estimations of how many people that have PTSD versus how many medical professionals are actually trained to handle and help with that, they are severely outnumbered. And we, as a people, once we actually start getting control of our own demons and we actually start making strides with helping ourselves out, we'll be able to go through and start helping them out. We'll be able to start lightening their load. And if you see somebody beating their head against the wall trying to help people, you know, I know this isn't really too terribly much of an issue, but don't hate them. Don't berate them, because they're doing what they can with what they've got. And it's not that, oh, you should trust people that have had PTSD and dealt with PTSD and gone through it and learned the ins and outs more than people that studied it at a school and read it in a book. That's not going to help anybody, because there is no, let me re-emphasize this, there is no such thing as competition when it comes to helping people out. And medical professionals, people like me, anybody that's trying to help people, they're helping in their own way. And to the psychiatrists and psychologists that may be watching this, I, for one, I want to say thank you for doing what you can. Don't ever feel like it's not enough. Don't ever feel like the sheer numbers of what the nature of this beast is too much for you. It's not too much for anyone. And you guys are doing some pretty damn good work. You guys are helping. Because there's so many ins and outs. I'm probably going to be making videos about this for years to come. Just trying to explore all of this in a way that actually helps people. You know, don't give up. If you want to help people, even if you're not, if you're just a friend of somebody that has PTSD and you feel like you should help your friend out, help your friend out. You know, just because you don't have it and they do doesn't mean that you won't be able to help out. I mean, there's a risk that it could affect you. Maybe not, well, okay, definitely not as seriously as it's affecting your friends, but it'll help. Any little bit of help. The only problem with PTSD is that people who have it suddenly become very protective. Not proud. It comes across as proud, but very protective, very afraid of being hurt again. And it makes it very difficult for them to help, or to ask for help, or to do anything in a conductive manner that actually helps them through their pain. So don't give up on them. Keep thanking them for sticking around. Keep thanking them for not giving in. Because that's what it's all about. That's why I say what I say when I do my outro is, you know, it's important for people to hear that. Because it's true. It's something that we need to hear day in, day out. We need to beat it into our brains until we get over this thought that PTSD is some horrible thing that you'll never be able to overcome. Trust me, that's not the case. We are more than capable of it. We just need the tools to actually do it. Did I just call myself a tool? Anyway, not surprising. But you've got to find some humor in it. You've got to find some happiness in it. There's a lot of darkness that you're going to be walking through, but you're not going to be walking through it alone. I mean, hell, even Dante, you know, for those of you who don't know, Dante Alighieri, believe he was a Franciscan monk, and he wrote a book about Dante's Inferno. It's actually the Divine Comedy, but Inferno, the first of the 3 sections of the Divine Comedy, is about his travels through hell. Even Dante wasn't alone in that. He had Virgil, a wise old guide that knew the ins and outs and could explain it. And yes, I read that book way too many times when I was a kid, and even today, but proof that Dante was onto something way back then. Never before was known a panic like to mine, I do believe. When the reins of Pantheon slipped from his hands as his car veered from its track and scorched the vaults of heaven. Nor when poor Icarus felt his waxen wings melt from his shoulders as his father's cry, "Ah, woeful flight," rang against his frightened ears. As I beheld the serpent beast of envenomed fang and forked tongue, trampling castles and cutting mountains down, as I inhaled the stench of its foul and fetid breath, which made the whole world wail, I grasped the reins and mounted the beast, as it slid down the slick and slippery slopes into the next circle of the abyss. Dante went through hell with Virgil. I guess that might be a good YouTube creator nickname for me. Consider me your own personal Virgil. Because if Dante can go through that, we can go through anything too. And just like Dante, never give up, never surrender.